All right, welcome to episode 92 of the At Bat podcast presented by War Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news, as well as take a trip around the league. I am Saul Rodriguez, and I am joined this week by Gabe Wilkins, who you've seen plenty of times on the podcast, and he has his own podcast as well, The State of Gabe, available exclusively on Spotify. How we doing, Gabe? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Can't complain at all. Been a lot of helter-skelter weather lately.
Mm-hmm.
We can't make up whether it's gonna be summer or we still in the early days of spring or whatever. But hey, we here, we living, we alive and well. It's always a pleasure to be talking baseball with
Hell yeah, man. No, I know it's here. It's like I always say, right? It's like it's gonna be either freezing cold, it's winter and terrible, or it's gonna be hot and rainy. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like every time it's you got a couple good days going in a row, it's like wait a minute, there's gonna be rain. It's like oh my, and yeah, that's the one thing too is like hey, we're here, so definitely appreciate whatever the hell we're getting for sure from the weather. But when it comes to baseball, man, it's just as crazy as the weather is in Chicago, these baseball teams are also just as crazy because Cubs are back at 500, and they're at this point they're looking like they're going to be under five. I don't know. They're down 4-3 to the Brewers in this in the seventh inning. So it's like I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it's just a whole circus in Chicago with baseball. While the White Sox have lost 8 in a row, and they've got comments from Pedro Grifol that are just like I don't know. I definitely want to discuss him talking about the batters being fucking flat. I definitely have to talk about that. So we'll start with the Cubs though, and get that out of the way. Gabe, like I said, their offense has been just horrendous. Like this whole month of May, like literally one of the worst offenses in baseball. Um, you have guys that have looked a little bit better over the last week, like Ian Happ, and Suzuki hit home run today. Like you hoping guys come around. Nico Horner, he's been consistent like for the most part on the offensive end. But what have you thought about the Cubs this month? Because they've lost series to division rivals. They're like I said, they're on the verge of losing one right now to the Brewers, 3 out of 4. What have you thought about them and just how they've been able to stay in there because ultimately, I think if I'm being realistic with myself, they're definitely playing more to how their roster's set up. I think that's just the truth because they don't have like it's really just Bellinger and Suzuki. If Suzuki is playing at the top of his game and Bellinger is probably one of the more consistent offensive guys, it's like everyone else haven't been able to be that consistent.
Oh, you can't survive without Cody Bellinger if you're a Cub
Mm-hmm.
fan. He's been the,
Yep.
the main source of your offensive power as of late. Of course, you got the 2 home run game from Ian Happ on Sunday
Mm-hmm.
against St. Louis, but even that proved not to be enough. And it's getting to a point where when you start losing the division rivals and you're losing series at home, such as when they had that 4 game set against Pittsburgh, and they let Pittsburgh walk in and take 3 out of 4. Then you get swept by St. Louis. And then on top of that, you lose 2 out of 3 to Atlanta at home, just as you did on the road. And we know Atlanta is no easy team to, face for any opponent, no matter the level of the opponent that they're facing. That offense imposes rather so many problems. But when I look at the Cubs right now, I see a team that has great starting pitching that has kept them in the majority of games. However, I see a shaky bullpen. And when you combine a shaky bullpen with an inconsistent offense and an offense that's been struggling, it makes it very hard to hold slim leads, which is hard enough as it is in today's game of baseball, which is predicated a lot off of power. And one swing of the bat can change a game if you're letting men on base via walk, or you're not playing well defensively, committing errors or whatever. You give the teams extra outs. That could prove to be very costly. So when I look at the Cubs right now, man, they got to figure out a way to get it together. Fortunately, they only 4.5 games back, but you got to start winning these division games. You talk about this game that they're playing today as we recorded. They're currently down in the bottom, in the bottom half of the 7 against the Brewers as I'm watching. But you got the Reds coming into town tomorrow. These are games that you cannot afford to drop. You have to win your division games, especially with the way in which the schedule is set up right now.
Yeah, I know you're right, and this is already the 7th matchup that the Cubs have with the Brewers. So slowly but surely we're one series away from saying goodbye to the Brewers for the season. So yeah, no, it's literally like yeah, it's definitely been frustrating to see this team like play like this month, but it's just funny to me because they've just been able to hang around, they still at 500 or over 500 for like about a couple games at certain points or whatever. But yeah, and it's funny you say that about the bullpen, and while you are right as a whole, this month they've been better, but at the same time, I don't take like that doesn't make me that happy to be honest, because like at the end of the day, like a guy like Mark Leiter Jr., who's been great for the Cubs overall, when you put all the pressure on that guy, I mean, I think we're kind of seeing what happens is that we're kind of seeing how that he might not necessarily be that eighth inning shutdown guy. That he's better off being like the seventh inning guy, like sixth inning guys get on base, whatever. It's just you put pressure on certain guys that like are not used to that. I mean, this is a guy that barely in the last couple of years has turned into a solid reliever. So I think that just says it all because we shouldn't rely on these guys. You still have to go out there and shore up the bullpen. There's no excuse. I mean, they got Tyson Miller, who's been solid for us so far. So it's at least Jed's doing something so far, early on in the season. But yeah, no, it's definitely just like a confusing team. I feel like so far because you don't know where they're gonna go. You don't know what some of these guys if they're gonna get hot or not. I mean, Dansby hasn't done anything offensively all season, and I know he's had to deal with some injuries, but still, and you just expect more. And then Mike Talkman, who started off red hot in April, he came back to earth in May, but he still is an on base machine, and I do appreciate him as a guy that's playing for us. But at the end of the day, like should he be playing every day is a question too as well. So it's one of those things that kind of opens the door to a guy like PCA who was brought back up, and I like to hear that he's basically going to be playing almost every day now, whether it be center field or whatever it is, because it sounds like they're going to put Bellinger more at first base and PCA. I think that kind of shows a little bit more of like, all right, well, they haven't been playing well. Something needs to change. And I mean, another thing too, I was going to ask you was, man, it's like at the end of the day too, when you break this roster down and you're like less biased to it and you look at it, it's just like you're realistically speaking, you're not going to win that many games when you're starting Yan Gomes, Miguel Amaya, Nick Madrigal, like, and it's not even like those
Yep.
guys are just cold, bro. Like they're just not good right now. You know what I mean? It's not like I don't expect all three of those guys to hit it all. You had at one point Master Boney in the lineup too, and I get it, injuries playing a part. I understand that, but at the same time, like fans sometimes act like, oh my god, like they should be like 20 games over 500 or whatever, and it's like, yeah, dude, when you're starting Master Boney and Madrigal like every day, like I mean, that's legit free outs. Like it's just the way it is. When you look at the numbers, that's what it looks like, right? And I don't know what have you thought about that and just like the way it's been set up because obviously, like I said, it's just injuries also, but at the same time, it's like the Cubs have plenty of guys that they could go to AAA to replace them with.
Yeah, it's getting to the point just looking at the Cubs from afar and seeing all of the talent that they have in their farm system. Why aren't you giving Luis Vasquez an opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
show and prove what he can do is short?
Yep.
And when Dansby was out, why aren't you giving Brendan Davis an opportunity, who's been crushing the ball in AAA Iowa as of late? A guy that I've been looking at for reasons that you know why, because of potential trades and whatnot. Like he's a guy that could probably help you out. And then you
Mm-hmm.
talk about Nick Madrigal, a guy who I'm very familiar with. The White Sox picked him fourth overall. I believe it was a couple of years ago in the draft or several years ago. They put him in the other day as a defensive replacement. He commits a costly error.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing stuff like that, and you already struggling at the plate as a manager, I'm like, how can I trust you? And it's getting to a point where if you're a Cub fan or somebody just following and watching the Cubs from afar, you really got to start asking yourself, what is this team, or what do they want to be?
Mm-hmm.
We know that this is a team that can compete off and on here and there, but like you said, there are certain guys that leave a lot to be desired. And this is a team that has needs, and they can address those needs if they decide to. The question is whether or not they're willing to give up some of their talent on the farm to address the talent at the major league level in an effort to win a central division that is there for the taking. You've seen the way that the Cardinals have utilized their success against the Cubs last weekend and catapulted themselves back into the division race after beating not only the Cubs, but taking some games in Cincinnati against the Reds. All you got to do is just play a good week or two of baseball and you're in it.
Hmm. Yeah, no, yeah, that's what I was scared of. I was like, man, we're playing the Cardinals. They're hot. They were like 8-2 going into that series, and then they just had all their guys hitting. Like it wasn't even like Arenado, like Goldschmidt
Right.
hit a few home runs. He's looking more like himself, but like Alec Burleson was out there hitting rockets and all this stuff. So yeah, I mean that's I knew that was coming, and it's just the way it is. And I think right now, as of right now, as we're sitting here May 30th, like this team looks built at the very best as a wild card team. You know what I mean? As
Mm-hmm.
Morel ties it in the eighth right now, he ties it with solo shot. But yeah, like it's just as of right now, like it's just flat out just being as unbiased as I can because literally like I see all these things online and just like people are always like meatball takes and all this stuff and it's just like man you gotta like don't people ever just like and Gabe I know you understand this as best as anyone is like doesn't anyone just like take a step back and be like man, maybe this team isn't as good as I thought it was, or maybe this player isn't as good as I thought. No, it's like people are always like, no, 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 I expect results today, now. It's like I'll never understand that, but
Welcome
it's
to
just
instant
it's
gratification society.
right,
That's all it is, man. And
yeah,
some guys and some fans have a guy that they've been following for the last several years, and they just
yeah,
know that he's gonna be the guy. And when they see you at work at the water cooler, they want to brag in your face and tell you, "I told you so" when he hit. But then
yeah,
everybody ain't a great talent evaluator. Even
yep.
me, cock, who is cocky and confident as I am, it's times I've got some things wrong. But you know what? I'm man enough to admit when I'm wrong.
There you go. Which I mean, in this day and age, game that says a whole lot because like that's like and I try to be the same way as well as like when you get something wrong, just say it. It's like it is what it is. Everybody gets something wrong. Like even some of the best analysts in the game will say something and
Absolutely.
it'll be wrong. So it's not a
Absolutely.
crime if you get something wrong. But yeah, no, and then as you mentioned with Luis Vasquez coming up, yeah, everybody was very like surprised at the fact that he came up and yeah, I think one at bat, I believe, if not
That's
two.
what I'm talking about.
Um, yeah, in a handful of games makes no sense to me. I know people had some theories like he was there to as a placeholder and that they were
Mm-hmm.
going to call up somebody else like in the next few days or whatever. People thought maybe it was Brendan Davis or something like that. Ended up being PCA and they sent Luis Vasquez down. But still a super strange situation there. And then also, yeah, with what you mentioned with Nick Madrigal and that error he made the other day is like that's the thing that kind of made me think is like, man, if he's not going to help us in the defensive end, then what is he going to help us with in general, right? It's because that's been his strong suit with the Cubs has been his defense. I mean, he was
Right.
he was he was really good last year at third base when a lot of people thought he couldn't play at that spot, and he played really well. And then this year, he's come in late in the games because Christopher Morel is barely getting used to that third base position. Which some people, again, on the other side, some people have thought, hey, like, Craig Counsell should give a little bit more, have a little longer leash with Morel at third base, late in the game. Like he's been better because he has been better since April. April, I know he had like 4 errors in April, maybe even a couple more, but he's been way better in May. So he's looking a whole lot better. And you just kind of wish that he would give him a little more leash. But yeah, no, definitely with the defense and guys like Madrigal, it's like you got to do something. And I will say too, another thing is we talked about it going into the season, right? The Cubs defense is like one of their strongest parts of the team, and they stand by their defense, like Nico Horner, Swanson, like the best middle defense has been one of the worst in baseball. Like it's like 20th in
Mm-hmm.
baseball when it comes, I think with about outs above average, if I remember correctly. Like it's just been bad overall. And I'm like, man, if this team can't even play defense, then what's their strong suit? Because when you play defense, we saw last year is like if you have a defense like the Cubs do, it wins you games. Because a lot of
Absolutely.
people are
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people. I have some friends that are like asking me like how much value does Nico Horner have when he doesn't play defense? Because he hasn't played well. Now, granted, again, let's take a step back. I don't think Nico Horner is this guy these last couple of months. I'm not sitting here saying get rid of the guy, but yeah, it does raise questions, right? When that happens, is like if they're not delivering in what they usually deliver on, then what are they going to do? And it kind of puts you in a little bit of a box, right?
And you got to ask yourself these questions anytime you
Mm-hmm.
lead the league in blowing games in which you have the lead in the
Yeah.
seventh inning or later.
Mm-hmm.
And that's become a common theme watching the Chicago Cubs. I don't watch most Cubs games, but when the Cubs are up in the seventh inning or later, I'm watching because I just want to see as a casual observer. Okay,
Yep.
are they gonna figure out a way to win, or how are they gonna blow it this time?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is the difference between whether or not you make it to see October or you just sitting on the sideline looking at the other teams at the end of the season. That plays a big role in it. And when I see this team, I see some pieces that they could use, and it's just a matter of what are they willing to give up and what are the sellers specifically looking for from the Cubs, because they got a decision that they have to make, and they have 8 to 10 weeks to make that decision. And while
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people believe that the team that's currently constructed will dictate those decisions, and they will, I don't think that they're gonna be out of it to the point where within the next 8 to 10 weeks, as the deadline approaches, you're looking at them as sellers. This is the
Mm-hmm.
NL Central. I don't think anybody's running away with this division. I think the Cincinnati Reds still have a chance to win the division, as well as the St. Louis Cardinals, and of course Milwaukee. You can't count them out, as well as the Cubs. Like, this is anybody's division to win. The question is who wants
100%. Yeah, and I think also too is that the Cubs, the Brewers always play them like really hard, regardless. Obviously the Cardinals do as well, but I feel like the Cubs for some reason play better when they're playing uh, against teams over 500 from other divisions. For some reason,
it.
it just like what I'm saying. I think they're under 500 officially now against teams in the Central, if not at 500, and against the NL Central. And yeah, like in April they played like a really hard schedule. Going to Seattle, playing the
Mm-hmm.
Dodgers. Like it was a tough schedule, and they were able to come out with one of their best months in history. In their history, it was one of the best months in their history. I think it might have been at par or maybe even like a game better than 2016. So it was crazy to see that. So like you come into into May and you're playing the Pirates more and whatever it is, and it's just like they can't find it for some reason. It's just the Pirates are always a thorn in their side, which it is what it is. But you have to learn how to win those games, and it's just like it hasn't worked out. But Ben Brown has looked really good. He had 7 no-hit innings the other day. People had the whole conversation of whether they keep him in or not. But I think at 93 pitches, kind of makes sense. Why you wouldn't want to leave him in there, because I mean he's a rookie and he doesn't have a lot of experience there. But what were your thoughts on that? You think they made the right decision? I'm assuming.
I
On your
mean,
thoughts there?
I understand. I understand the
Mm-hmm.
modern era. We live in a time now where everything is about pitch count. Guys
Mm-hmm.
have to protect their asset. It's not the MLB that me and you grew up on as kids, where
Yeah.
I had that no hitter. He was looking at that manager like, "Hey, you take me out, I'm gonna start something after the game or whatever." So it's not that type of era anymore. Where a guy would throw 130 pitches or whatever just to get that no. So I like the way that he pitched and performed. I think that Kyle Hendricks' days in the starting rotation are numbered, and it's getting to a point where the Cubs and the Ricketts family, I know they have a loyalty to Hendricks and for what he was able to do there, and he played a part on some winning teams and over the last decade, most notably the 2016 team that he won the ring with. But man, it's not looking good. So you got to give some of these young arms a chance. And I saw last night that Caden Horton got pulled out of his start.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Brown is a guy. If he can pitch like that continuously in your starting rotation, let him ride.
Yeah, and I think I forgot who said this. They said after the game that Ben Brown in that 7 no-hit performance, like that it looked like a closer for 7 straight innings. And I mean that, like, if that doesn't say something, your own players are saying that, that says it all right there with how good he is. And yeah, Kyle Hendricks, man, yeah, I mean even out of the bullpen, he's looked a little shaky. Like it just hasn't. It's just overall, it's not looking great for him. I mean, I know I was at game 3 against the Braves and it was 1-0. He comes in and I was like, oh man, it's already 1-0. They add a couple more runs. It's going to feel like 10-0 because the offense isn't scoring. And they ended
Yep.
up scoring first of all, Marcell Ozuna almost hit like a grand slam at one point. They like died at the wall, but they ended up scoring 2 runs and the game ended 3-0. And I was like, yep, after with the offense, if you're losing 3-0, it feels like a ton more. So yeah, he's not looking so great. Imanaga finally had his first stinker of the season, which was expected. You know, it by no means is surprising. It just the only thing that sucks is that it came against the Brewers, right? It's like if it came against the Pirates, one thing, you know, came against like the Dodgers, another. But like the fact that it came in such a big game, that's probably what sucks. But it was funny to see him like, you know, apologizing to Craig Counsell. It just shows how good of a guy that dude is. Like he's like apologizing, like bro, you have nothing to apologize for. You've been the one of the only consistent, like if not only the consistent guy on the team, the most consistent guy on the team, and like so yeah, I don't know, you know, just shows how what type of person that dude is. But the last thing I do want to ask you about the Cubs though is trade deadline. You mentioned it, and is there any guy in any particular player or players that you see the Cubs targeting? Because the picture is looking a little more clear when it comes to trade deadline, which teams are going to be interested in getting guys, which you know players are going to be available. Like for example, the Mets are looking terrible in every way, shape, or form. To the point where like you're thinking, you know, if healthy, I know he left the game the other day. He got hit in the hand. Pete Alonso, he's probably going to be on the market if he's healthy. You know, they have plenty of other guys in there that they'll consider moving, but when it comes to that, I had a couple ideas. So I'll see what you think, and then you give me ideas if you have some. But I was actually thinking too, and I've seen other people talk about this as well. But I know for the longest time, people have been saying the Cubs should go out and get Bo Bichette. And like people have said, hey, maybe put him at third base or whatever, like, you know, move guys around, whatever it is. And I like that idea, and like I think it's still on the table. But I also thought maybe Vladdy actually, because you put him at first base, you really just need Pop in the lineup. That's all you really need him to do, and he doesn't have to be the guy anymore, right? I feel like he has a lot of pressure in Toronto to be the guy. Him and Bo Bichette do. I feel like. So one guy. Then also you pair him up with Danny Jansen because the Cubs need, you know, they need some hitting from
Catch.
the catcher's
Mhm.
end. But yeah, no, that's the type of move that I think the Cubs should make. Now I know also what you're thinking is that realistically speaking, is where's the relief help too, and that's the part that is a little bit of an issue too. Is where is like, are the Cubs gonna have to choose one or the other? Because I'm like, damn. And realistically speaking, you put it like if you told me like I have to make a decision or like the world's gonna blow up and I have to choose one or the other, I think I would choose reliever because like they have offensive guys like Brendan Davis as you mentioned, or you know, even like Matt Shaw. I know he's cooled off a little bit, but guys like that they could come up and make an offensive impact. But any guys in particular that you're seeing right now on the big leagues that maybe could make an impact on the Cubs if they're able to go out and get them?
I could definitely see a Vlad Jr. type move. The Cubs have the prospects to pull it off. But my only question is who are they willing to give up? That's always the
Mm-hmm.
question when you have this surplus of top 100 talent in your farm system. Who are you willing to give up? They're in the same boat with the Orioles in that regard. Those are the top two farm systems in all of baseball. If you look at MLB pipeline top 100, you know, and you look at the prospects by team that are on the top 100 list, the Orioles and Cubs at the top of the top. But for me, I mean, I could see a lot of guys, man. Like you could go cross town for some help. You need a lefty reliever, you get Tim Hill. You want a guy with some heat that you feel like you can fine tune a little bit, you go to Michael Kopech. You know, it's just a question of what are you willing to give up as far as power production. You talk about Vlad Jr., you brought up Pete Alonso. I mean, you could look at a guy like Josh Bell if you want. It all depends on how much are you willing to pay. Josh Bell's been getting moved around the last two deadlines. He went from where was it Pittsburgh? Oh no, he went from Washington to San Diego. Then he went to Cleveland in the offseason. Cleveland traded
Mm-hmm.
him to Miami, played a big role in both of the Padres and Marlins playoff runs in the last couple of years. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a guy that you could get at a low price, knowing that the Marlins are going to be seeking a sale on a lot of guys. You know, we just saw an article from Ken Rosenthal this morning that said Jesus Luzardo is the most likely player, the player that most likely to be traded out of all the top players that's on the market this year. So on sellers and therefore like that. So when I look at the Cubs, it's a lot of directions that they can go. It's just a matter of what are you willing to give up and whether or not you're able to meet the seller's request just as much as they want to meet the Cubs request as the buyer.
Yeah, no, and I think also with relievers is like with the whole Jesus Luzardo thing, because I am interested in him for sure. And I think because some people are like, oh well, the rotation is not the problem, but the solution is that you add Luzardo to the rotation, and it allows somebody from the rotation who's pitching well to be in the bullpen. Like for example, like as much as he's been really good this year, a guy like Javier Assad, we know he could do it we know he could do it from the bullpen. We know he could do it from the rotation. So why, if he has to go back into the bullpen, that's fine for me, honestly, because I mean he's helping on every side of the
Oh,
game. Because I mean, look, because the thing is Gabe, who do you take out? You know what I mean? Like
I
you're not
get it.
taking out
I,
Tyon, you're not taking out Imanaga. It's like that's the part.
I,
It's a hard decision. Not easy.
yeah, that's a very tough decision. You right,
Mm-hmm,
you can do that. You can get
mm-hmm,
creative and do that, but that reminds me of like the Yankees, right? You take
mm-hmm.
Luis Gil right now. Look at the way he's pitching.
Yeah.
Within the next
Mm-hmm,
couple of weeks to 3 weeks, Derek Cole is going to be returning to the Yankees rotation. I don't think you want to remove Luis Gil out the rotation
yeah.
after the month of May that he's had. And with baseball, man, you don't play with momentum. If a guy has
Mm-hmm,
shown you that they can get it done in the starting rotation for that given season, I think you let them stay there. Javier Assad, you right. He can move to the bullpen, but man, with the way he's looking, I would say he's the Cubs' second best pitcher besides Schroeder right now.
mm-hmm,
And with Justin Steele just working his way back in the rhythm and fine tuning some things, I wouldn't want to break up that rotation. I do think that they could use a starting pitcher, but I just over the next several weeks, I think things are gonna become a lot more clear. Like if
mm-hmm.
a side struggles, then okay, and you could get a Jesus Luzardo, fine, you do that. But yeah, that's kind of tough. They're in a similar situation to the Yankees in
Mm-hmm.
regards with a side like Luis Gil. I don't think you want to mess with those two dudes right now.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Because I mean, looking at the Yankees depth chart, it's like, yeah, who do you take out? Rodon, Stroman, Cortez, Schmidt. You're
Clark
not taking
Schmidt,
out
yeah.
any. Yeah, so it's like all those guys are pitching really well. So they got to make a decision. And I think also what it allows you to do also is you can give guys days off too. I think right. It's like you can do like put in the guy, sub in, whatever type of thing. You could do that, and a difficult thing. It's like you said, easier said than done. But yeah, it's gonna be a decision they're gonna have to make, and it's not gonna be an easy one, for sure. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what the Cubs do because, like you said, 8 to 10 weeks is what's gonna be deciding what they do, and the division's right there. They just got to go out there and win games. And so I've seen some people say, I don't know if I think these are the Brewers. Like, are they going to do this all year? And look, we say this every year. I feel like, is this really the Brewers? Is this really Brewers? And guess what? They end up in October. So like,
Yeah.
there's no questioning the Brewers. Like I think this is who they are. Even if they somehow aren't able to hold the lead in first place in the NL Central, they'll be in the playoffs. I feel like. I know the Padres are getting hot. I understand that. Like they're going to look better when the team's healthy, and Lisa Rise, and hell, they might even go out there and get another guy. So we'll see what happens. But so far, we're going to enter June, and Cubs are in the playoff race, so that's the most important part. But looking at now the White Sox, like I said, they've lost 8 in a row, and they've had a lot of struggles. Like I said, we're going to talk about Pedro Grifol's comments and all that. But what have you taken away from the White Sox in the last couple of weeks? Obviously, there hasn't been a lot of winning, but there has been guys like Nick Nastrini who's gone out there. He struggled a little bit, but I will say, looking at Nick Nastrini, I feel like it's just a matter of like tinkering with his stuff because he's got good stuff. It's just kind of locating, and I feel like that's one of the things that I think one of the games I was watching, the Blue Jays were swinging at like every first pitch. But what have you taken away from the Sox the last couple of weeks in general as a whole?
I'm looking at a team right now, so that I don't like to say this, but I don't believe that they are playing for their manager right now. I think I think this locker room has become divided. And I see a group of young players that are trying to find ways to play for one another and get their stuff together, but like they gotta learn how to win. They gotta learn how to win. I was at Nasrini's last start. Nasrini, you right. He does have to work on fine tuning his command. I think he may even have to add a pitch this off season, but he needs reps and he's got to work on cutting his walks down. I thought he found a way to battle through his start against Toronto. He looked a lot better his second go round against the Blue Jays compared to his first when he gave up, I want to say like 7 or 9 runs through like 3 and a third. But they had a chance to win that game. Anytime you get 10 hits, you can only scratch out 1 run, and you're going like 1 for 7, 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position. That's not going to cut it. I saw a stat going in the last night's game, which was Wednesday night's game against the Blue Jays, where the White Sox were batting barely over 200 with runners in scoring position. For folks that don't watch baseball every day like we do, that's the difference between being in the cellar versus being at the top of your division. Right there. If you can't cash in key situations with the money on the line, that's a problem. This team has scored, I believe, 4 runs or 5 runs in the last 4 games. I went to 2 out of the last 5. And you talk about Pedro Grifol, right? With the flat comments. I got a question. Where was this a season ago? What was this fire a season ago for Pedro Grifol? When his team had lost 10 games in a row in April? Where was it? Because for you to pick that day of all days, even though I understand Cal Bradish had a no-hitter through 7, like the way he talked about his team publicly, I had a serious problem with that. Like, I know you know baseball, so Cal Bradish was a top 5 vote recipient in the Cy Young Award last year. Like, I know this was his second or third start back off the IL, but like, the dude is legit. He's legit. Like, you just have to tip your cap sometimes when you get your ass beat. You just do. That's part of it. You don't have the horses to run with you. But when I see guys like Corey Lee firing back, Gavin Sheets firing back, Garrett Crochet firing back, 3 guys who had to fight for their positioning on this roster. You know, Corey Lee should be playing every day. He's not. You know, Gavin Sheets should be playing every day. He's playing mostly every day, but he's not always playing in his natural position. Andrew Vaughn, I want Andrew Vaughn to succeed better than anybody. But when you're not cutting it and you're batting under 250 and you were a guy that had high acclaim and praise put on your name from the moment you entered the league when you went 3rd overall in 2019, like at some point, I find myself sometimes asking, is he a guy that we need to send to AAA? You know, just to get some reps and to find his rhythm and confidence? Because, like, I'm looking at the White Sox right now. There are a lot of guys on this roster that need to be DFA'd. This is the major leagues, bro. You got to show up and show out and produce. And if you're not doing your job, like, I understand October is over. But with the direction the White Sox are going in right now, it's getting scary as a fan to watch because I've never seen them at this low of a watermark to it, like after Memorial Day. They lost all 7 games on their homestand. They went winless on their last homestand. I know Baltimore is the creme de la creme in the American League, or among them. I know Toronto is no slouch either. But man, you can't get sent out home like that. And it's getting to a point where I'm actually on a countdown as far as the days that remain with Pedro Grifol reigning as the manager of this team. Like it's getting that bad. And I think when a manager makes a comment like that, the way that he made it, guys know.
Yeah, and they mentioned it, I think, in the postgame. There's Chuck Garfien that said that, you know, there was the first time in the White Sox history that they went a 7-game homestand winless.
Yeah.
which is like that's crazy because
Yeah,
you would think in baseball you've seen it all sometimes with how long it's been around, but no, I guess not. You haven't. And another thing too is I saw another thing too was that they have 29 games this season with 2 runs or less, which basically is half of the
hmm
games, which is crazy to me too. But yeah, no, I'm right with you with the Pedro Grifol comments. Like what the heck? Like where was this 200 games ago? And like also is
yeah,
like you're not going to give credit to the guy because I know it was you saw Jim Palmer's comments too. He tweeted out,
I did.
basically like, yeah, he was like saying, I forgot exactly what he said, but he was kind of like standing up for his guy a little bit, like Bradish a little bit, saying like kind of like he's not no slouch or whatever. And it's like it's
No,
true
he's not.
because you do have to give credit to you do have to give credit to the pitcher too. And it's like I get it if you get if you get shut out by Lance Lynn or like a guy like Chris Bassett who hasn't been pitching well but pitching well against the White Sox, you have to sometimes you're like, okay, maybe the lineup looked a little bad, whatever. But you're going up against a guy like you said, finishing top 5 in the Cy Young. It's like sometimes you just get beat. Anybody that happens to anybody. So yeah, it's just strange to me the timing of the comments, and strange to me the fact that like not everybody was on board. And then like the next day they asked him too. They were like about the comments, and he's like, no, like
I'm
this
gonna double down.
the yeah, he doubled
Yeah,
down on it, and then he's like the clubhouse is not divided. Like you guys are trying to put this narrative. Like no. And I'm like, you say that, but what we hear is a different thing. It's like you hear what the players are saying and all this, and yeah, like what Corey Lee's comments. So what's
but I'm
up?
gonna tell you why the clubhouse is divided. You Corey Lee, you batting over 270. You cementing yourself as a mainstay in the everyday lineup with the way in which you come and perform to do your job. And no disrespect to Martin Maldonado. I know he's a World Series champion. I know he's a highly respected catcher in the league, and at one point in time was one of the best defensive catchers in the league. But Martin Maldonado is damn near 40. And he's batting like 0.83 the last time I
Mm-hmm.
checked. And he's been hitless like in his last 20 plus at bats. And he has an OPS that is well under 300. And he's playing more than Corey Lee is. I have a significant problem with that. Not just as a fan, but as somebody that watches baseball. Like, if I was in that dugout, I'm like, I don't understand that. Like the way that he throws young players under the bus, there's no place for that. There's no place for that. You're supposed to teach and help develop and cultivate the talent that you have at your disposal. And you don't play around with young guys in this league because you can break their confidence just as much as you can make. And when you sit up here and you throw guys like Brian Ramos under the bus saying, well, he missed the sign when he's providing a spark for you prior to him getting hurt. And I understand that the White Sox optioned him today to AAA Charlotte. And I'm all for that because he does need to make the adjustment to hitting inside pitching, which is the adjustment that pitchers have made toward him after he got off the high start. But man, like what are you trying to prove? What are you trying to prove? And at this point, you gotta know that the people from the top down are looking at you. I'm not finna put all of this on Chris Getz, but he needs to be gone by July. And I said that the last time I came on with you guys, and I said it even then. I said if it was me, he would have been gone because it should have never gotten to this point. You're getting to a point now where you like the schedule's not getting any easier. You have the Brewers, you have the Cubs, you got all these other, you got the Dodgers coming in town in the month of June. Like, oh, you got to get this right. Play the guys that deserve to be playing every single day.
Yeah, and yeah, man, you said it best. I mean, and then looking at they look at their lineup every day, and you mentioned it with Maldonado and I mean in Vaughn, it's like Benintendi too as well. It's like every
Yeah, I'm
day
glad
these
you
guys
brought
are
him
in
up.
the they're in the lineup and they're hitting under 200. You got Maldonado
Yeah,
who's, I mean, Maldonado. I have to look at that like 3 or 4 times just to make sure I'm seeing right because that's crazy to me. Like even right now, And I understand also too that like this guy's never been known for his bat. I understand that,
He
but
has.
like
Mm-hmm.
this is a whole different level. You know what I mean? There's a whole different level. And like, and then I agree with you though, because you know, they asked Pedro so many times about why he's in the lineup, why he continues to play, and he just stays in the same thing where it's like, hey, our pitchers this, our pitchers that. Like, you know, he likes the way that he handles our pitchers, blah blah blah. But it's like, how long? Two things: how long are you going to be able to stand on that? And number two, it's not like they have the best pitching in the league or anything like that. Like he has to keep the Maldonado in there. You know what I mean? Like, and then also it's like if that's the case, then DH Corey Lemore or like whatever it is. Like you have the ability to move things around to put these
Well,
guys in
he
the
did that.
lineup. Yeah.
Yeah, he did that last night. He
Mm-hmm.
DH Corey Lee. But
Yeah.
see, he's able to get away with that shit now because Eloy is hurt.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Corey
exactly.
Lee,
Yeah, when Eloy,
Corey,
yeah.
Corey,
Mm-hmm.
Corey Lee, let's be real. Corey Lee needs to be playing 6, if not 5 out of 7 games a week. If the White
Mm-hmm.
Sox playing 7 games a week, Corey Lee need to be out there 5 times. If they're playing 6 games a week, he need to be
Yep.
out there like 5 times. Like
Mm-hmm.
every week, like the only time Maldonado should be playing is when Corey needs a rest day or a maintenance day. I
Yep.
understand. I'm all for giving catchers maintenance days. That's the toughest damn
Mm-hmm.
position to play in the game. You know what I'm saying? Every catcher needs a day off from time to time. But
Mm-hmm.
Corey Lee has proven his place on this roster. This was a guy. I don't think a lot of people know this. So if it was not for Max Stassi, who they signed in the offseason getting hurt in spring training, Corey
Mm-hmm.
Lee would not be on this roster.
Yep.
It's getting to a point where if I'm Chris Getz and I see you playing Martin Maldonado, I have to get like Brad Pitt and Moneyball and say, you know what? I'm DFAing Maldonado. And I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
bring up Adam Hackenberg from AAA Charlotte. And I'm going to force you to play Corey Lee every day because that's the best catcher you have right now on this roster. Until Edgar Caro comes up, Corey Lee needs to be playing every day. Andrew Benintendi, hey, highest paid player in White Sox history. A guy that I defended when he had his hot month of June and whatnot. But right now, he's not cutting it. If he's not cutting it, get that dude a couple days off. Put Corey Jokes in left field if you have to. Switch it up. Give Dominic Fletcher some of the bats. This is a guy that you traded one of your top pitching prospects for over the winter. You have to play these young guys to see what it is that you have so you know what you need to get. Because I'm looking at this roster right now, and even though they are 15 and 42 as we're talking today, I truly believe, so in my heart of hearts, if they had a better manager in house, they could have plus 8 more victories with this roster. But when you don't know how to manage your lineup, you don't know how to manage your bullpen, and you're putting guys coming from out the pen in situations that they're not used to being in, or that's not their customary role. Like this team was designed to win on the margins, and they're not doing it. And even though I didn't expect this team to be a team that competed for the Central or a wild card spot in the American League, leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then also, you mentioned Corey Jolks. Like, there's a guy that, you know, comes in and immediately makes an impact. He's, you know,
Yeah,
and I understand that he has splits and all that, but this is another guy who should be playing every day too. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, fit him in wherever. Like, that's the thing is like, you know, use that DH spot when Eloy's out.
yep.
Which I mean, which you mentioned Eloy once, but it's like, man, we're getting to a point where, I mean, it's just Eloy. Nobody's gonna want to trade for that guy either because people are like, oh, like they should trade him, they should get rid of him. It's like it's just it's crazy to me how many times this guy gets injured that he might not even be worth anybody going out there and giving up a piece. Like it might not even be worth trading him because you might not get anything back. And
At
that's
this point,
yeah.
Saul, you have to cut your losses.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to trade him, you're gonna have to pay a quarter of his salary or whatever just to do it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think the White Sox want to do that. I don't think a team is gonna want him that bad enough, even if the White Sox were willing to pay part of his salary. Same with your Moncada. They have to cut those losses. And this offseason, they're gonna have to buy them out their deals, the final year of their contracts, and they're gonna have to reset the books and clear up some money. And they gotta get several hitters that they can put at the top of their order. Like it has gotten so rough to watch the White Sox offense. So I'm watching the Barons on Bally Live every day. And I'm not bullshitting when I say that. I'm watching the Barons
They're
every
fun to
day.
watch.
They're very fun to watch.
Yeah.
But you know why I'm watching them? Because it lets me know what they have and what they don't have and what they need. The White Sox farm system has a surplus of pitchers right now, a surplus of them. And I don't mind them taking the time that they need to develop those guys. A couple of them, as we know, they're going to be up here by this summer, by the end of the summer. They will be up here. But they got to get some bats, man.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and you mentioned the Barons, like, yeah, you got guys out down there like Duke Ellis, just like
Brooks
running
Baldwin,
everywhere and stealing bases, robbing hits. Like that dude looks like he do everything. So,
Jacob
yeah, there's
Gonzalez has been hitting.
yeah, Jay Gonzalez, yeah. So it's like they definitely have the guys down there that yeah, it's like you kind of see the holes in where they need certain things and where these guys fit in. But yeah, it's just crazy to me. And another thing too, I wanted to ask you was the play that went super viral all over the place. People talking about it was the Vaughn interference call at second base against the Orioles. And they ended the game on that. They called it infield fly rule. Vaughn got in the. I think he got in the way of I think it was Gunnar Henderson, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And they ended up calling him out to end the game. And this actually happened again yesterday with Juan Soto at second base against the Angels. So even though the MLB came out and said that they shouldn't have made that call, they shouldn't have ended the game with the White Sox and Orioles. The umpires went out and did the same thing again. It's like where is the guy supposed to go? But I do want to get your thoughts on that, and just like if you were watching that game live, like what did you think about that situation overall? Because you can't end a game like that. That's just ridiculous.
I was watching the game live.
Yeah.
And I saw a team that was trying to fight back and they were rallying their way back into the ball game. And you hate to see games end like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a play for it in Major League Baseball, no matter who's playing, whether it's your team or my team or anybody else's team. I understand that the umpire has full discretion to make that call, but I didn't see interference in that situation. I didn't. And I thought it was a BS call. And I learned a lot about Pedro Gaffar that night too. And his inability to fight for his players. Sometimes you have to fight for your guys publicly. He was like, well, they made the right call, but I don't agree with it. I'm like, stand on what you mean, Pedro. You I know you were pissed off when that call was made. Let that be known. If you got to take the blowback, take the blowback. That's part of being a manager. Everybody's not gonna be for you. A lot of people gonna be against you. You gotta take that, man. It's good. Like I say, it was unfortunate, and I honestly believe that killing that rally kind of brought a tidal wave effect for the worst right now for the White Sox, and that's why I was quick to say when we spoke the last time that I'm not willing to say that the White Sox are in a good place yet after they had took 3 out of 4 from Cleveland and then they took 2 out of 3 from Washington, because I knew that the schedule was going to get harder. And I was interested in seeing how they competed against the top of the top in the league. And while they've had some games that they've been close in, they ain't been getting the job done. And to me, it just looks like a house that's divided. And if this was any other organization, I have to say it, man. Pedro Gaffar would have been gone a long time ago.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, I think the leash has been long for the for a lot of for the situation and the way it is, but it's like, yeah, much longer is it going to go? And I think, yeah, but I think by July he might be gone too. I think just the way things look, I think,
He has to
and
be.
it has to be, yeah, and
Montgomery is almost ready. If
yeah.
he's almost ready, well, like let's be real. So, like, I just want to ask you, as a Cub fan, would you want to
Mhm.
bring Kosa Montgomery up with Pedro Gaffar managing? I know I would.
No, yeah, yeah. I think
Or Drew
it's like,
Thorpe, or any of these future guys.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's something like, and I've said this before, and I know, like, when you really stand back and look at it, you may be like, okay, maybe that's not the right way of doing things. It's not good for the confidence, because I've said it before. Maybe it's a good thing to like still develop in the big leagues, even if a team's bad. But I think you've said it too, and I understand it hurts the confidence of the player. It's not, sometimes when in those situations that, when you come into a clubhouse like that, it's not good for the development of a player. Just no matter how good the player is, It's going to affect them in a certain way. I think that's one of the main things why, like, okay, I understand a little bit more of like why you don't want to bring up a guy in this situation. And yeah, especially in this situation with the White Sox, yeah, I wouldn't want to bring up Colson Montgomery up in this. And this is the guy that you want to be like the next face of your franchise, or when or part of it, if with Luis Robert along with him. So it's like, yeah, it you don't want to do that, and it's just I don't know what's gonna happen with these guys because they have a bunch of guys like Drew Thorpe and all that are gonna come up, and you don't want them to come up in a toxic situation.
And I want to say one more thing before we get done talking about the White Sox. You hear a lot of fans on Twitter talking about how you gotta trade everybody. We have to stop with this bullshit
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to we must trade everybody. You have to keep pieces around that you can build around. You can't start a house up without some form of foundation. I need White Sox fans to understand that. Like, even when the Cubs rebuilt their franchise, they had to go out and spend some money of some sort. Now, money doesn't guarantee that you're gonna win, but you gotta spend something and you gotta invest in your talent that you have in house. Some of them. You only trade the pieces away that can net you a significant amount of talent back that are on expiring contracts or have some value because they have a couple of years or 3 years left on their deal. But you don't just trade top 10 players for pennies on a dollar. You can't do that shit and expect to just win within the next few years.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I think also too is that people are talking about with when it comes to trading guys, they talk about Luis Robert, for example, too, and
Yeah,
they mentioned I think he was even Jeff Passan suggested it, how like he might be a commodity that the Mariners may be interested in the trade deadline, and I'm
right.
like, man, it's like I don't know, like that just like from one end I'm like, you know you're selling high on a guy who's an all-star, one of the best defenders in the league, but then on the other end, you're like, what kind of message are you sending to the fans of fans that already are livid with the front office? You're
Thank you.
gonna you're gonna reach like Oakland A territory when it comes to how much the fans hate on the front office if you're out there trading a
Exactly.
guy like Luis Robert Jr.
Exactly. And that is where we're approaching as a fan base. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't like losing. And I know that these White Sox fans don't. But it gets to a point where I'm at a point where I can't even laugh at this shit no more. It's like you let me know when you ready to get your stuff together, and I'm gonna come back around even more. But I'm really watching now more than I did in the years where we were supposed to have a championship window because I want to see what's going on. What are these moves gonna lead to? What they gonna lead to? Because I know Jerry's not going nowhere. Them
Yeah.
sell the team banners ain't gonna do what you think it's gonna do. Trust me. I know the man very well. It's not gonna do what you think it's gonna do. It might actually incentivize him to spend less.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's sad but true. I mean, from what people have heard of like leaks of conversations and all that of like how he thinks of winning cultures and the way teams are and the way best situation to sell and make money.
Mm-hmm.
It's so yeah, no, you're right, man. I think and this is something that I'm sure we're gonna keep talking about for the rest of the summer and the way that this team is shaping up, but hopefully, and I mean this wholeheartedly, like no doubt. As much as I always say this, I'm a Cubs fan, but this is just that's on a whole this is on a whole nother level. Like even if you're a Cubs fan, you can't be celebrating this type of stuff on the South Side because at the end of the day, Cubs fans enjoy going to the South Side and watching the White Sox too, watching other teams too. It's like ain't nobody trying to watch a team this bad. Like everybody wants to see competitive baseball. So like
Absolutely.
there's nobody that's rooting on for this. So hopefully there's more positive days ahead because I mean I'm excited to see Colson. I'm excited to see Drew Thorpe, and all these other guys that they end up bringing out soon. So hopefully that is sooner rather than later. The last thing I want to talk about today is one of the biggest stories I think, and one of the I feel like it hasn't been talked about enough, even though people have talked about it. But the fact that the MLB announced that the Negro Leagues, the statistics for the Negro Leagues are going to be added to the MLB books, and that's like as big of a story as I've seen in a long time when it comes to baseball and stats and all that. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this because, um, online I see a lot of different conversations happening. Obviously, there's always going to be people that like are just obviously like boneheads and talking about like, oh, like we should add like at this point, then let's just add the Japanese stats too, all this stuff, like blah blah blah, all this just ridiculous commentary, right?
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, like we all know realistically, as people who appreciate baseball, this is a good thing for baseball. You're putting it in there, and you're showing guys like Josh Gibson how great he was. And so yeah, I mean it's just it's a great thing for baseball, and I hope that people will realize that if the time of some people saying certain things, which I'm sure is the minority. I'm not saying that's a majority by no means, but Gabe, wanted to get your thoughts on this because I mean this is pretty cool, and when you have games like for example later this year they're going to play the game to honor the Negro Leagues, and in Alabama if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, Alabama, and
So
then in the minor leagues, the Barons are gonna play at Rick Wood this year.
oh hell yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So
so it's gonna be real cool to see them do that and have a field of dreams like game in an environment where so many of the all time greats in the Negro Leagues play.
yeah, and this is also coming after the fact that we had in the offseason I was able to speak to Sam Pollard who directed the movie The League, and that
Mhm.
movie in itself, I'll be honest with you, like with a lot of the players, I mean obviously Bob Gibson's, Satchel Paige, all those guys, but like a guy like Josh Gibson, I wasn't super familiar with his game. Watching
Mhm.
a movie like The League, for example, kind of opened my eyes a little bit more to what type of player he was, and other players, not just him as well. So it was cool. People should definitely see that movie, The League. I'm sure it's available to stream somewhere right now, so definitely check that out. But yeah, Gabe, what were your thoughts when you heard about this news break this week?
It made me happy, but as someone that has had the fortune and pleasure to talk to people that once played in the Negro Leagues and taught me the history of the game when I was a young kid before I ever even played in Little League. Like I had conversations with Double D Radcliffe and stuff. Like I feel sad for them because they didn't get a chance to see the fact that they were acknowledged. And for
Mm-hmm.
so long, they were told that their league wasn't an official league when I think the historians of the game always knew that the Negro Leagues were an official league. And I give a shout out to John Thorne, who's the historian of Major League Baseball and a guy that was featured very heavily on Ken Burns' baseball documentary
Yep.
for bringing these stats and numbers to light. I think it's good because it gives the next generation more insight onto who these figures are, or it at least encourages them to look up who Josh Gibson is, or who Turkey Stearns is, who Buck Leonard is, and so forth. These figures that are now in the record books. But as a black man, it just feels like it's too late,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just that's it's the sad truth and reality of it all. It just feels like it's too late. I feel like it's a way for them to right their wrongs. This was something that should have happened a long time ago. And I know that Josh Gibson's in the Hall of Fame. I know that Buck Leonard's in the Hall of Fame, Buck O'Neill, and all these legends that made the Negro League what it was. But when I see stuff like this, as much as I think about people like Double Duty Radcliffe who put me up on game, I used to sit and watch a lot of White Sox games in his final years before he passed. I also think about people like Effa Manley, who owned the Newark Eagles and had a lot of her players poached off from the Eagles, such as Monty Irvin and Don Newcomb. Like she didn't always get compensated for that. Nowadays, you had these Japanese teams getting compensated just for a player taking a meeting with a Major League Baseball team, and they get compensated to be bought out of their contracts. Like that led in a lot of ways to the Negro League's demise. And as a result, it hurt the black community on the economical level in a way that I don't think we really recovered from it. But all in all, I mean, I'm happy that they get their recognition and their just due. But it just feels like it's too little, too late. And for those that want to say that they don't find it to be an official league, I think from '49 into 1962, 9 out of 11 National League MVPs came from the Negro Leagues, and they were black players. So if you think that the Negro Leagues wasn't an official league, you need to take a look at the guys that made baseball in the 1960s. The majority of them were black players who came from the Negro League. You can't deny the impact that it had on the game, whether you like it or not. You know, the game was played a lot faster, and it was played in a way that encouraged a lot of Americans, even outside of Black America, to want to play the sport.
Yeah, no, no, yeah, you put it very well, and I think you look at some of the guys that are stars of the game today. It really just said the proof is in the pudding right there, where it's like you literally have to look at that and be like, well, the game would have been completely different then if like 100 years ago they let people of color play and in Major League Baseball, like the game would have been completely different. Like
Yeah,
we sit here we sit here talking about Ty Cobb, the player, because obviously as a person he was a horrible dude, but like who knows like that from back then, like who knows what type of player he would have competed against some of the best players in baseball at that time if they were born people of color. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, some people be like, oh, and you make a good point. It is definitely like, I get that, because it is a little too late for some of the guys, and you wish that some other guys would have seen it and all this and that, and also just like sometimes with certain situations like this, you almost feel like organizations do it just to kind of get like a pat on the back and being like, look, we did something good. I understand that for sure, 100%. Like that is definitely something that should be considered in this situation. So, but yeah, it's like with uh, how long it took, I think is the reason why we're all talking about this, and it should have been done a long time ago. But I'm glad at least it did it now, and it's one of those things where it's like at least that's the silver lining in it all, and like they were able to do it. And I think that's one of the situations around, or one of the point of views that I'm at right now.
and I want to give credit to MLB the show and whoever the
Yeah.
producers, the creators were
Hmm.
that sparked the idea to tell the history of the Negro Leagues story on that video game. Because you can't tell me that didn't play a role in it. I
Yep.
think that played a role in it as much as the fact that the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues was 4 years ago,
Hmm.
because they slowly was starting to, get to this point at the beginning of the decade when they honored the 100th anniversary, and they were talking about bringing the records into the forefront and counting them as official players of Major League Baseball and whatnot. It's a way to right the wrong, but I just hope that these families of these players are able to get some type of compensation as much as they're getting appreciation for the work that their relatives did, not only in the boardroom, but on the playing field. And as far as, coaching guys that developed and became superstars at the major league level, those who were fortunate and blessed to do it.
Yeah, 100%. I hope that is the case. And you're right with LB the show. It's one thing I hadn't mentioned. And yeah, like I saw people online, like even like kids, like teenagers, like talking about how like they didn't know, and they learned a lot about Josh Gibson from MLB the show this year, and like
Yeah.
they're and all that. It was last year's though, right? Was it last year or was it
Yeah, it
this year
was
that they
last year.
did a?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last
Mm-hmm.
year's. Yeah, right. Okay. Um, that they learned a lot from the Negro Leagues and a lot of these players and all that, which is cool to see. And I think that definitely, I'm sure, helped and motivated the league to do that, for sure. Because I mean, it was great the way they put it together. I mean, the intro I saw all the time, every time I turned on the game, and seeing some of the music that they added, and even this year they've added more songs from black women, and just in general black artists, and it's great to see songs from back in the day kind of like get bigger now, and it's pretty awesome. But yeah, as much as as much as I agree with you for sure on the fact that like it took too long, I'm like, man, yeah, I do kind of also wish that people, some people that have passed away now saw this for sure.
And then, I hope that it encourages Major League Baseball and the commissioner, Rob Manfred, to figure out more initiatives to get baseball back ingrained within the black community.
Yeah.
Because you did this at a time in which there are not a lot of African American players on Major League Baseball roster.
Hmm.
Like, could you imagine if they made this announcement? And I got to give a shout out to my friend Torrance Stagger for bringing this to my attention. But could you imagine if they did this about 20 years ago when Ken Griffey Jr., Barry Bonds, and like the guys like the Derek Lees and the Frank Thomases and Jermaine Dye was in the league? How much power this could have had, like, and we could have really got their opinion on it. Like, you don't even really have too many black players that you can ask, hey, if you worked in the media, how do you feel about this?
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree, man. I think, and then that, like, I mean, this is a whole other podcast to talk about when it comes to like these issues and why it is the way it is, no
Absolutely.
doubt. But like, yeah, I mean, we all know baseball is one of those pay to play sports, and there's a lot of reasons why there isn't a lot of black players playing in the league and all this
Absolutely.
stuff, and it's like, and it's frustrating because I mean, it's like you look at the NFL where there's so many black athletes and all this, and it's like, they're definitely out there to play, and it's like it doesn't. I don't get why in baseball, and it just goes to show the type of organization it is. And like, look, we all love baseball, and I get it, but at the end of the day, we do it. We look at it's like looking at our own country and looking at our issues. From if you want to put it in a bigger perspective, but it's like with baseball, we love it, but we see the issues in it, and I mean, we look at how set in their ways they are. And when you go as far as to like even like for example, like from my point of view too, is like um you look at how hard it is to even like get in on MLB baseball from the media side of things, is like
And
it
yeah,
just shows you, yeah, it just shows you
I
again. And
know.
it's like
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the press box in the NFL, and I see that it's majority white, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's crazy. And it's like these organizations, um they just haven't changed their ways in hundreds, in like in decades, I should say. And it's just like
Yeah.
it's frustrating to see that, and like you hope that it's going in the right direction, but like it looks like it's going in the opposite direction because we see less and less black players in the league. And granted, obviously it's good that there's a lot of Latinos in the game, but at the end of the day, dude, like we all want more black players in Major League Baseball. It's just plain and simple.
And I want to say this too. A lot of
Hmm.
kids gravitate to figures that they see within sports who
Hmm.
look like them, walk like
Yep.
them, and talk like them. It's no different than the adults. Like for me, I don't know if I'd have gotten a baseball if it wasn't for my mom working in the course, but seeing a Frank Thomas every day or
Hmm.
seeing a Ken Griffey Jr. Like there were a lot of black faces in the game when I started watching baseball, and that's why it became my first love over the NBA, a sport that I love just as much as baseball. And I grew to love a little bit more, but I follow, I know why I follow the NBA more because I see more coaches that look like me. I see more players that look like me. It's understandable, like with Latin America, like it's a source of pride when you watch the World Baseball Classic, and if
Hmm.
you're Hispanic or you're Mexican, you see Team Mexico, or you see the Dominican Republic and you're Dominican. Like it's a source of pride that's there. So I understand that people gravitate to something that they see that looks like them on the screen doing great things.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. Like I can't stress enough how important representation is, and obviously and obviously the people that don't agree with that, we all know why they think that way, and we all know
Absolutely.
which group of people it is that say that. But it's like representation 1,000% matters when you look at something and you look at how big of an impact like Spider Verse has had, and like
Yep.
how people see themselves in Spider-Man more and more now. Like that's crazy. Like you know what I mean? Like you have a Latino kid or a young black kid like to see that and be like, I could be Spider-Man. Like that's awesome. Like I don't get
Mm-hmm.
the negativity. I don't get what I'm saying. Like we got Fairly Odd Parents, like the new series of Fairly Odd Parents has
Mm-hmm.
a black character now as like the main kid. And like I see the commentary on Facebook, I see that stuff of people saying like, well, oh, of course they like, oh, Fairly Odd Parents has gone woke or whatever. It's like, it's just it's on a whole nother level. And like I said, we could talk about this for hours because there's so many societal issues more than it is like on a
It
whole different
is.
scale of baseball that you could
Definitely.
pertain it to. But yeah, I mean, on the bright side, hopefully this causes more change. It's a more of a trickle down effect, and we're able to see more African American baseball players in the league because I mean, it's no other way to put it that we need more of that. So I will say, wish we had more time, but I think that's going to be a good place to end this edition of the At Bad podcast. I want to thank Gabe Wilkins, of course, for joining me as always. You can check out his podcast as well, The State of Gabe, exclusively on Spotify. Hopefully, Miles Porter can join us next week. I know Chris Pennant woke up a little under the weather. Hopefully, we can have him next week as well. I want to thank everyone for watching. Make sure you watch all our other coverage on War Media, like the Bears Den. Listen to Slam Society as well. And then on Sports Zone Chicago with their guy, Sean Sierra. You got the Sean and Maya show. And they also have Second City Sports with Lakina and Sid. So check out that stuff. Appreciate you guys watching. For Saul Rodriguez, Gabe Wilkins. Hopefully everyone has a great week.